Hello everybody, I'm Crystal from Android Authority, and Motorola just announced a Verizon exclusive, the Droid Turbo 2, which they claim has a shatterproof screen. It looks like a very interesting phone, and with a few moments of playing around with the device, we couldn't help but see the similarities between the Droid Turbo 2 and the Moto X Pure, which Motorola also released not too long ago. If you're in the market for a new Motorola phone, you've got a tough choice to make. So let's dive a little deeper and compare these two phones, the Droid Turbo 2 versus the Moto X Pure. First off, like I said, the Droid Turbo 2 is a Verizon exclusive, so unfortunately, if you're not a Verizon customer, you won't be able to activate the Turbo 2 on your carrier. It's the opposite with the Moto X Pure, however, where one size fits all in a sense. No matter what SIM card you put in your Moto X Pure, the phone should work flawlessly. So in terms of design, both phones have similar looks and features. We have the camera and LED flash surrounded by this metal border with the Motorola dimple below, which creates a good resting point for your finger. On the Droid Turbo 2, that dimple is a little higher than it is on the Moto X Pure, and it feels a little more natural to hold, but this does depend on your hand size. Now both of these phones' designs can be customized by Motomaker, so for both phones you can choose between soft silicone, leather, and wooden backings. The accent colors are also available to change. Besides the larger metal frame around the Droid Turbo 2, the only other visible difference between the two is its speakers. On the Moto X Pure, you have a beautiful audio experience as it features dual front-facing stereo speakers. They get very loud and sound crisp and clear, whereas the Droid Turbo 2 only has one speaker located on the bottom right. It doesn't get as loud as the Moto X Pure as it's just one small speaker, and the quality isn't as great, but it's still a decent sounding speaker. Everything else is the same, volume and power buttons on the right, with the power button having a grippy texture to it, headphone jack on top, with access to your SIM card and expandable storage, and we've got our micro USB ports on the bottom. There are very minor differences in terms of size and weight, however. The Droid Turbo 2 is a little shorter than the Moto X Pure, although a little wider just by a couple millimeters. The back of the Moto X Pure is a little more rounded, which makes it a little thick at 11.1 millimeters, and while the Droid Turbo 2 is quite flat, it's a little thinner. Now without a doubt, the biggest area of difference between these two phones is the display. The Droid Turbo 2 offers a 5.4-inch Quad HD display, while the Moto X Pure sports a much bigger 5.7-inch Quad HD display. Both screens are beautiful, but we'll have to give the edge to the Droid Turbo 2. The Turbo 2 has an AMOLED screen versus the Pure's LCD panel. So colors displayed on the Droid Turbo 2 are much more vibrant and saturated with deeper blacks. Both screens are beautiful, but the Droid Turbo 2 takes it even further, of course, with what Motorola is calling Moto Shatter Shield. Motorola claims that this phone's display is shatterproof, and during the time that we've had the phone, we've tortured this thing, dropping it on cement over and over, and the display remains good as new. If you're somebody who's a little clumsy and known for dropping their phone all the time, you may want to lean a little more towards the Droid Turbo 2. Taking a look under the hood, both phones seem to look very fast, although the Droid Turbo 2 once again appears to be able to outperform the Moto X Pure. The Turbo 2 packs a Snapdragon 810 processor, while the Moto X Pure is stuck with an 808 processor. Both offer 3 gigs of RAM, but once again the Droid Turbo 2 offers something that just does not compare to the Moto X Pure, a 3760 mAh battery versus a 3000 mAh battery. Motorola claims that the Droid Turbo 2 can last for up to 2 full days of use, but that all depends of course on how you use the phone. We were pretty happy with the battery life on the Moto X Pure, but with a 25% bigger battery on the Droid Turbo 2 is definitely the winner. However, both phones are capable of being charged with Motorola's turbocharger, which is the fastest on the market right now. You should be able to get 13 hours of charge in just 15 minutes using this charger. The software experience is the same on both phones. At the moment, both are running Android Lollipop 5.1.1 with a Marshmallow update coming in the future. And Motorola's version of Android is pretty similar to stock Android, almost identical. Both phones are very fast at navigating around. You won't be able to notice much lag or stutters anywhere throughout the software. And while Motorola didn't do too much tinkering with their skin, they did add some cool features that can be found on both phones, like Moto Display that alerts you of your missed notifications when waving your hand in front, and the nice gestures to launch apps like the flashlight and camera. Really, the only difference you'll notice when navigating through these phones is the extra Verizon apps that come pre-installed with the Droid Turbo 2. In terms of cameras, both phones offer the same 21 megapixel rear shooter and the 5 megapixel front facing shooter, and they do a great job. Pictures come out very beautiful, although it can have a little trouble in low light areas. Feel free to take a look at the full reviews of these phones to get a better understanding at how great these cameras actually are. Now pricing is where the Moto X Pure can finally take the crown. With the Droid Turbo 2 having the extra edge in most departments, it's obvious that it's going to be a little more expensive. Verizon has a 24-month installment plan of $26 per month for the 32 gig and $30 per month for the 64 gig. So translating that to full pricing, we're looking at $624 and $720 respectively. The Moto X Pure, however, starts pretty low at $399 for the 16 gig model, $449 for 32 gigs, and $499 for the 64 gig variant. Both the Droid Turbo 2 and the Moto X Pure are great phones, and for the most part are very similar, the only main differences being the bigger battery and shatterproof screen found on the Droid Turbo 2. These two advantages do come with a price though, literally, as the Droid Turbo 2 is going to cost you about $200 more than the Moto X Pure, so you'll have to ask yourself if these extra features are worth it. Well, thanks for watching this comparison of the Droid Turbo 2 and the Moto X Pure. Be sure to stay subscribed here at Android Authority for more on these phones, and check out their full reviews where we go a bit more in depth. And lastly, check out our website androidauthority.com, as we are your source for all things Android.